Do you think venture changes with this world of AI where we're seeing, I mean, coming out of the 2020 and 2021 kind of years, it was austerity measures, right? It was pursue cash flow, get to some amount of revenue, maybe even to break even, control your own destiny. Everything's starting to get tighter in 22, 23, 24. And so the entrepreneurs have kind of shifted their mindset to focus on that. And then when you layer in AI, we're seeing a compression of how much money is needed to be able to build a product, to get to product market fit, to get to some level of revenue where you could control your own destiny. So do you think that this trend is going to continue where VCs are, maybe it's out of hesitancy not deploying capital, but maybe it's also out of companies are needing less and less to raise. And so they're kind of going this, not bootstrapped approach, but kind of a slower burn, a less raise, and kind of be able to do more with less.
Yeah, 100% yes. I mean, I think that, as you said, a few things happening, the austerity and we have to be super capital efficient has really kind of shored up the mentality of many entrepreneurs, which is great. And then that coupled with so many of the incredible tools and automations that you can access now as entrepreneurs. So I think that confluence of things is really bringing around a new landscape. As a venture capitalist, it doesn't bother me at all because I'm actually an entrepreneur at heart. I built 2 companies and I'm always rooting for the entrepreneurs. And so if you don't need us anymore, like, that's great. Like, I'll find other things to do.
A woman of the people.
But I think that's, it's really exciting. So to give you an example, we have a portfolio company. They had bootstrapped an AI automation tool. I don't think that's a huge company, but they bootstrapped that while living in Bali. They wanted to live as cheaply as possible. So they moved to Bali. And that product generates about $30K a month. So it's just on autopilot. They spend, 10 minutes a day on it. And that gives them $30K a month. Now, they are pursuing what they really want to pursue, which is a much larger opportunity. And to do that, they didn't really need much money because this is just a cash cow. And they decided, to let some friends and family who knew them, and, we'd known those guys for a while. We put in a small check. They didn't really want to raise money. And, we're excited about this big vision. So I think that was hard to do a few years ago. But to see people being able to bootstrap these businesses by having lifestyle changes, by, having these side businesses, I think is really inspiring. And maybe a few years ago, they would have been looked down upon. Like, investors would have said, well, you got to raise venture capital. You have to think bigger. You can't have this like side business. I think it's really being celebrated now. And that's exciting. I think we're saying like bootstrap businesses are great. I bootstrapped my first company. So I was working full time at JP Morgan and started this company in my living room. And we had, built product, had customers and revenue while I was still working. And then, everyone said, I think you better quit your day job to focus on this. This is a real thing. So, bootstrapping is back and now the tools are even better. And I think that's really great.
I've always been a fan of kind of that dichotomy between bootstrapping of, starting your own thing, kind of like clawing out that revenue and getting to that control. You have full control if you don't raise external capital, and you can kind of grow organically, and maybe it's slower, but it's also maybe more aligned with the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur's goals, but at the offset of they're holding all the risk. Versus venture capitalist route, you're diversifying risk, you're bringing on capital from investors, and you can go faster. But there's that balance, right? Which is right for which type of business, what size is your total addressable market. So my question for you is, from a venture perspective, if you're investing in entrepreneurs that are bootstrapped, that maybe have more of a leaning towards lifestyle, if they can end up getting free flowing $1 million in cash, that's a really great business for someone just to own, but it's not necessarily a very good business for an investor to invest in if they're looking for a return on capital. So how do you and your partners kind of look at investing in bootstrap businesses with the idea of returning money to LPs?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. We have a model and we can't really amend our model because we raise money from these external limited partners. And so we need to invest in companies that will, return our fund and make money for our LPs. I think the thing is we need to shift this binary kind of outcome of like, we're bootstrapped or we're not. And I think what's really interesting about what's happening now and the guys that we invested in is like they want to raise money down the road. They just don't need to right now. And I think this idea, that really kind of came to a head in 2020, 2021, where everyone just thought, I have an idea, I'm going to go raise money. And I think we're now having this reset of like, okay, like you have an idea, like go use Cursor and get a prototype going. And there's all these like amazing tools to get it out there. But that doesn't mean that you want to be bootstrapped forever. And so I
Hmm.
think that it was always very binary, and it was, oh, well, you have a bootstrap business. And so there was, that was derogatory. Well, it's a lifestyle business. I think that if you can get your business off the ground and find product market fit, which we've found sometimes can take 2 to 3 rounds of capital, right, before you really find product market fit, that can be $8 million, $10 million that you've raised in different tranches, and all of this. Well, maybe there's a better way to do it, right? Where you control your own destiny, and maybe you don't find product market fit and you haven't burned all that cash, right? And so there's obviously opportunity costs for the entrepreneur. But I like this reset where at different times in your business, you control the levers. And we're really seeing that with our founders. We have a few companies that have actually raised a significant amount. Now they've gotten to profitability, and they'll decide what the next step is, based on market, based on their own metrics. And I think that's great. And, I don't think everything just goes up and to the right in company building. And maybe like that has to be rethought in terms of venture, that there'll be periods where these companies maybe are bootstrapped or they control their own destiny. And there'll be, periods where they need rocket fuel.
Love it. And I think if you enjoyed that clip, there is much more of that conversation. Make sure to check out the full interview where we get into so much more. And if it was helpful, click the like and subscribe button. If not, no worries. Hopefully, I'll convince you next time. I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy wherever you are.